They tossed it into the lion enclosure. Sealed in a sack. A 3-month-old, golden-colored Alaskan Malamute puppy, tied up inside a torn feed bag. 4:13 a.m. Our surveillance camera caught the moment. Headlights flashed through the trees outside the perimeter fence of the Stone Ridge Wildlife Sanctuary. A car door slams. Then the sound of cloth dragging on metal. A dull thump as something hits the ground. I sprinted toward the fence near the carnivore area. The bag had been ripped from the inside, soaked and muddy. And next to it was the puppy. Standing on trembling legs, covered in mud, blood smeared on his paws. He wasn't barking. He wasn't crying. He was just standing on his hind legs, forepaws raised, facing down the alpha female lion. Solis. 17 years old, the oldest lion in our sanctuary. Strong. Proud. Dangerous. But she wasn't growling. She was motionless, staring at the pup as if she'd seen a ghost. I couldn't move either. I wasn't even breathing. Neither was the pup. The wind shifted. Solis twitched her nose, but still didn't move. The pup raised his head even higher, as if acknowledging her, or perhaps pleading. I've worked here for 11 years. I've seen prey shake. I've seen them collapse in terror. But never this. This pup wasn't afraid. He seemed to be accepting his fate. Someone threw him away like trash. But they aimed for the lion. And the lion chose not to kill him. That's when I realized what I was witnessing. This wasn't a survival instinct. This was mercy. I wrapped the pup in my jacket, but his body didn't react. No flinching. No curling up. Just shallow, irregular breaths. He didn't seem to care if he was being helped or hurt further. His eyes never left Solis. She stood unmoving by the steel bars. The female lion, known for charging the iron, for crunching bones like dry sticks, was now just watching a single puppy. I looked at the torn bag. The nylon had been clawed from the inside. Blood adhered to the tears. No microchip. No collar. No note. Just a strip of cloth, tied tight, as if someone didn't want him to escape. They wanted the pup sealed in the bag, to die quietly. "It's okay, buddy. You're okay," I kept saying as I carried him to the back entrance of the veterinary hospital. Dr. Evelyn Shaw touched the raw wounds on his leg. We hosed the mud off his coat. He just stared past us, out the window, toward the lion enclosure. "What's his name, Ethan?" Dr. Shaw asked. I didn't answer. Not yet. We didn't use anesthesia. We didn't need to. He lay perfectly still while we bandaged his leg, checked his vitals, and scanned for a microchip. Nothing. No ID. No name. No past. But at 7 a.m., when the lions roared in unison, a deep, inherited sound that echoed through the trees, the pup lifted his head slightly. And for the first time, I saw something change in him. Ears perked. Eyes wide. His chest rose and fell as if he could finally breathe. "That's it," I whispered. "That sound calms him." We moved him into a soft kennel in my office that day. I couldn't leave him alone. That's when I named him Valor. It's an old name. It means courage. I thought it suited him. The security guard replayed the footage while I watched Valor. Frame by frame, at 0.25x speed. The headlights paused outside the service entrance for 5 seconds. A fleeting moment. A hooded and gloved figure climbed out, grabbed the bag, and hurled it. It didn't just drop by chance. The bag landed exactly where Solis's territory meets the outer wall. I choked. I didn't say it out loud, but I knew what it meant. Someone chose that spot. Someone didn't just dump him. They staged it. They wanted him to die in the lion's jaw. Quietly. Unseen. Forgotten by morning. But he didn't die. And the lion didn't kill him. What was this? Coincidence? Or something else entirely? I looked at the pup. Curled up behind the kennel bars. Silent. But his face was turned toward the window, waiting. The next morning, Valor was sitting up in the kennel. Still weak, but trying to get up. His ears twitched as the early feeding cart passed outside. And when Solis let out a low rumble from across the building, he stood on his trembling legs. Not toward the food. Not toward me. Toward her. I slowly opened the kennel. "Are you really going?" He walked past me without hesitation. I followed him through the staff corridor, past the padlocked gate onto the walkway behind the lion house. He walked as if pulled by a magnet. Stumbling, putting weight on his bandaged paw, yet his steps were determined. And she was there. Solis, standing right against the fence. She hadn't done that in years. We'd stopped using that section of the observation deck because she never came close. She was too old for intimidation or dominance now. But her eyes were locked on one thing. Him. I knelt down. "Easy, Valor. Easy. He didn't bark or whine. He just sat, about 2 feet from the steel bars, tail curled, spine straight, eyes wide. She didn't growl. No baring of fangs. She too, sat down. 2 shadows. A battered, limping 3-month-old Alaskan Malamute pup, and an aged female lion. An apex predator of Africa. Sitting across from each other in silence. A cold shiver ran down my spine. It wasn't fear. Something else. Something unsaid. Recognition. Valor cocked his head slightly. Solis answered with a low purr. A soft sound. I'd heard that sound before. Years ago. When my police dog, Max, had guided a lost little girl back to her mother's arms, and the mother had let out a primal sigh of relief, as if something ancient had been restored. This. Mike Rodriguez, one of our keepers, watched from a distance. What in the world are we looking at, Ethan? He muttered. That lion hates everything. I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. All I knew was that this small, broken creature had survived in an impossible way, and the one who was supposed to kill him had become his shield. My chest tightened, a feeling I hadn't felt in years. Not since Max died under 3 tons of concrete, still leashed to my vest, since I screamed his name, clutching his fur, bleeding from my mouth. I thought I was done with dogs. Done with loving. But standing there, watching Valor close his eyes in peace beside the female lion, I admitted to myself, maybe this kid wasn't born to die. Maybe he was born to find her. I didn't tell anyone what I felt that morning. Not when Valor rested his head against the base of the fence as if it were his rightful place. Not when Solis lowered her body to the ground, meeting his gaze, squinting her eyes like a mother watching her cub. And not when I found myself sitting next to them, knees on the gravel, just breathing. I hadn't been able to sit like this for a year. The last time I tried, I ended up just staring at Max's empty harness, still hanging on the garage wall. I couldn't bring myself to take it down. Touching it would mean admitting he was gone, that we failed, that he died saving people on duty. But I couldn't save him. Since then, dog barks, the sound of a leash, the German Shepherd puppies passing through the current police dog training program. I avoided it all. I was finished. But Valor was quiet, gentle, yet not empty. He didn't demand attention. No licking hands, no tail wagging. He just followed me, observed the lions, and sat as if waiting for something I couldn't understand. That afternoon, I found him curled up on the floor in my office. Not in the corner of the room, but by the window, the one facing Solis's enclosure. He dragged his blanket there. Dr. Shaw came by to check his paw. How's the limp? He barely uses it, I said, stroking his ear gently. But he doesn't seem to care. She looked at him for a long moment, then quietly said, it's like she's tethering him. I didn't say it out loud, but she was right. That night, I stayed late. The zoo was quiet. That special silence that only comes when every living thing falls asleep at the same time. No guests, no carts, just the wind and the distant cries of night creatures. Valor was restless. I could tell. He paced the office, staring at the door. So I opened it. He walked out, slowly heading toward the enclosure. No leash, no urging. Solis was waiting. This time, he didn't stop 2 feet from the fence. He walked right up, sat, and then lay down. Head between his forepaws, eyes closed, facing her. Solis mirrored him. I stood in the darkness, arms crossed, trying to explain it in my head. Predator and prey. No. Survivor and survivor. She lost 2 litters when she was young. Complications. One stillborn, the second a few days after birth. She was never a mother. And he had no one. Not even the memory of a gentle human touch. So maybe, just maybe, this bond, this quiet, incredible trust across species, wasn't about instinct. It was about loss. And the instinct to cling to what's left. By the weekend, Valor was eating without prompting, still no tail wagging. Still no sound. But the way he moved was different. No longer a creature braced for the next blow, but one who believed the worst was over. He walked with me on my early morning rounds, the limp barely noticeable. I'd walk for a few minutes, then pick him up when he tired. But every morning, like clockwork, he was drawn to Solis. It wasn't mere interest. It was need. I started calling it the shift. Every time he approached her fence, his whole body changed. Head up, shoulders back. Chest pressed to the ground, like a soldier reporting for duty, and he would sit, perfectly still. And Solis, wherever she was, would get up and come to the steel bars. Every single time. One time, a family walked by the main pathway, and the kids yelled loudly. Solis usually turned away from noise. But that day, she stood firm. Her gaze not on the kids, but on Valor's shoulder, as if standing guard. Mike Rodriguez was squinting. I'm telling you, this is not normal. Apex predator behavior is inverted. I watched Valor crane his neck toward her. His eyes were soft. She doesn't see him as prey, I whispered. She sees him as hers. He laughed, uneasy. Then what does he see in her? I looked at Valor and felt something swell in my chest. Safety. Back in the clinic, I examined his makeshift collar again. Dry, but the leather was warped and cracked. I turned it over in my hand, looking for anything. An inscription. Initials. Anything. Nothing. But something was wrong. The strap hadn't broken from wear or tear. It had been cleanly, deliberately cut. The metal ring for the ID tag was gone, and there were faint drag marks on the fold. Someone hadn't lost this puppy. They had erased his name. His story. I thought about the impossibly perfect angle, the tied sack, the silent limp, and the waiting lion. Too much for coincidence. Who does this? I muttered to myself. Who throws a puppy into a lion enclosure and expects it to survive? Dr. Shaw overheard me and answered from across the room. Someone who wants it gone but doesn't want their hands dirty. The word struck me. That's why her. Solis. If she had pounced and killed him, it wouldn't be their fault. Not their mistake. Just nature. They banked on her instinct. But instinct doesn't always win. Sometimes, something deeper prevails. When mercy shows up where death is expected. The next morning, before dawn, I found Valor sitting at the front door. Not pacing. Not crying. Just waiting, as if he knew she was there. I opened the door, and he limped out into the cold mist. Frost was settling on his fur like dust. The zoo was still asleep, but she was awake. Solis was by the steel bars. She didn't move as he approached. Only when he sat by the fence did she lower her massive body to the ground, facing him. Two silhouettes against the pre-dawn sky, a lioness and an Alaskan Malamute pup, breathing the same morning air, as if sharing one heartbeat. My radio crackled with chatter from the gate, but I ignored it. Instead, I crouched down a few feet from him, trying to understand what I was seeing, what they were seeing. And for a second, I thought I distinctly saw her blink, slowly, deliberately. Valor answered with a small movement. His head tilted slightly toward the steel bars. Not close enough to touch, but close enough for trust. I pulled out my phone and took a photo. I didn't know why. Maybe to prove to myself later that I hadn't imagined it. Later that afternoon, a group of elementary school kids passed by on an early tour. I wasn't on duty, but I watched from the staff walkway. A little girl tugged on her mother's sleeve. Mommy, Mommy, why is there a doggy in the lion's house? She whispered. The mother didn't answer. How could you explain this? How could you explain that the female lion, always irritated, aggressive, and silent, now lay on guard by the fence for hours? How could you explain that a shredded puppy with no name and no past chose to sit beside a predator every day, as if it were the only safe place? I spoke, unintentionally. Because sometimes the fiercest things protect the smallest things. And sometimes, what we fear the most is what's most wounded. That night, as the zoo settled into its nocturnal rhythm, I stood alone by Solis's enclosure. Valor was curled up asleep in his kennel in the clinic. His leg was finally healing. But I kept thinking about the little girl's question. Why is he there? And more so, why did she allow him? The answer would only come from memory, not from fact or logic. Solis lost her last cub nearly 7 years ago. Complications. Staff said she changed after that. Became introverted, short-tempered. Unresponsive to enrichment activities. Interacting less with the other lions. Until now, she'd retreated to the deepest corner of her habitat. And Valor, who didn't flinch at the sound of a truck or perk his ears when people called his name. He moved only for her. He sat only for her. Two creatures scarred by abandonment. One denied motherhood, one denied love. And yet, they found something. Not kinship. Not instinct. But recognition in their brokenness. In what they lost. And in each other. When I turned off the last light in the corridor that night, I caught my reflection in the glass. And for the first time in a year, I didn't look empty. The next morning, I didn't need an alarm. Valor was already awake, standing by the office door. Tail unmoving, body alert. He wasn't looking at me. He was waiting. I opened the door without a word. He started walking. No limp today. No hesitation. I followed him across the gravel, my heart pounding. It wasn't anxiety. Something else. Like I was catching up to a moment I didn't deserve, but couldn't miss. The sun hadn't crested the fog yet, but Solis was by the fence. Standing this time. And as Valor approached, something changed. He didn't sit. He ran. Not away from me, but toward her. In a blink, he covered the distance between the clinic and the enclosure fence, stopping short a few inches from the steel bars. He stood up, forepaws suspended in the air, leaning against the fence. Solis stepped forward, and their eyes locked. And she did something that made me gasp. She let out a deep, low purr from the back of her chest. A sound reserved for her own cubs. A sound humans don't teach. A mother's sound. And he answered. Tilting his head, he licked the cold steel bars, as if trying to get to the other side. As if he wasn't trying to escape. He was trying to go home. I didn't notice Mike Rodriguez and Dr. Shaw standing behind me. What in God's name are we watching? Mike whispered. I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. But I felt it in my chest. In my trembling hands. This was not training. This was not baiting. This was choice. Two animals who were never supposed to meet, found something in each other that no one else could provide. Comfort. Recognition. Reason. And for the first time since Max died, I allowed myself to sit on the ground. Valor looked back, just for a second, at me. He didn't run to me. He didn't need to. He just looked at me as if to say, you see it now, don't you? And I did. I saw the emptiness in my own life. What I had buried beneath uniforms, reports, and silence. I hadn't been afraid of love. I had been afraid of the loss that followed. But Valor wasn't afraid of anything. Not the lion, not the fence, not me. I'm not ready to love again, I choked out. Tears burned in the back of my eyes. But maybe you're ready for both of us. Over the next few days, the sanctuary changed in ways no one expected. Solis, the oldest and most unpredictable lion in the park, began spending her mornings at the front of the enclosure. No more pacing. No more hiding. She was waiting for him. Valor would limp out of the clinic with purpose. As if the pain in his leg had yielded to something stronger. He went straight to the fence, pressed his body to the ground, and breathed. The distance between them never closed physically, but emotionally, it was the closest thing I'd ever seen in the animal kingdom. We started calling it the ritual. She would purr softly. He would blink slowly. And they would just be. Side by side. In silence. In understanding. Kids gathered behind the safety glass, watching in quiet astonishment. No shouting. No banging. As if they knew something sacred was happening. Why is the doggy with the lion? A young boy asked his teacher. She smiled uncertainly. I interjected. I don't know why. Maybe the world needed to hear it. Because sometimes the fiercest things protect the smallest things, I said. And sometimes, what we fear the most is what's most wounded. The boy blinked, and then nodded, as if he understood something we adults had forgotten. Valor started standing straighter. The golden gray of his coat lost its dullness. His ears stood taller, he started sniffing visitors without flinching. He let Dr. Shaw stroke his back without freezing. He was still quiet, but it was no longer the silence of terror. It was the silence of peace. And Solis changed, too. No longer aggressive at feeding time. More vigilant. When the other lions roared, she didn't join in. She remained by the front wall, watching. Waiting. One afternoon, I was hosing down a side path and turned to see her sitting as close to the clinic, where Valor was, as possible. She was tracking the little chime of his collar. Just a faint clink sound, but it guided her to him. That night, I dreamed of Max for the first time in months. He wasn't in the field or under the rubble. He was sitting quietly in a patch of grass, just looking at me. No fear. No pain. Just being. I woke up crying. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was relief. Valor had given me back something I didn't even realize I had lost. Not just love, but permission to feel again. The alarm on my radio woke me up. Code 3, intruder alert. North wall perimeter. 2:42 a.m. I scrambled into my uniform and boots, heart hammering, stepping out into the darkness. Something was wrong. I could feel it. The camera showed movement at the exact spot where Valor had been tossed 2 weeks earlier. Same corner. Same headlights. I ran full tilt. By the time I reached the outer road near the carnivore pens, the truck was gone. But the door to Valor's kennel was open. He was gone. Panic cut through me like a knife. I scanned the area. No sounds. No barks. Just the chirping of crickets and the wind through the trees. Then I heard it. A low, resonating growl from the lion enclosure. I ran. Flashlight dancing in my hand, breath catching in my throat. I rounded the corner and froze. He was there. Valor, standing on his hind legs at the fence, forepaws raised, facing Solis, exactly like the first night. But this time, his body was rigid, his fur bristling. He faced her, but his eyes were locked on me, and the dark woods behind me. I spun around and saw it. The fence near the woods was pried open, fresh cut marks in the chain link. And right beneath it, another bag, empty, discarded as if someone had dropped it in a hurry. A second puppy. No, too small. Like garbage. Like it was meant for another animal. Another angle. Another breath. And Valor had broken out to find it. Solis growled behind me. Louder than I'd heard her in years, but not at me. At the trees. She was warning. She was guarding. Valor turned and nudged his body against the fence, as if telling her I'm okay. It was as if they had planned it. And for a second, I saw something that made no sense on paper, but total sense in my bones. She wasn't just watching him. He was watching her. I rushed to Valor, dropped to my knees, and pulled him into my arms. His body was trembling, but his eyes were clear and focused. He hadn't escaped. He had stood guard, the tiny puppy someone tried to erase, standing between danger and the only living thing that had ever made him feel safe. We examined the second bag at dawn. It was soaking wet, shredded, and reeking of gasoline. No blood. No movement. Just a wet, crumpled blanket and a faint smell of something burnt. And inside, wrapped tightly in the corner fold, we found it. A tiny, scorched collar, melted in a few spots. Too small for Valor. Dr. Shaw covered her mouth, staring at it. They weren't just dumping him, Ethan, she whispered. They were experimenting first. I held the piece of black nylon in my gloved hands and felt my chest tighten. The buckle was warped, the metal melted as if someone had deformed it with heat. This was deliberate. Someone had tried to erase another puppy before him. And Valor was next. But he survived. Not because someone cared, but because the female lion didn't do what they expected her to. I looked toward Solis. She was pacing now, agitated, alert. Her eyes constantly tracked the fence line behind the enclosure. And Valor, as always, sat just outside her pen. But something in him had changed. His posture was rigid, ears sharp, chest out. Fearless. Defiant. As if his fight wasn't over. And that's when I broke down. Right there on the dirt path, the wind blowing grit in my face, my boots caked in mud, I knelt and cried. Not from fear or anger, but from the grief that had finally found a place to land. I remembered the last time I held Max. His heartbeat slowing beneath my hands, blood on his fur, concrete pressing him down. He hadn't looked at me with pain, but with the same question Valor had quietly asked every day since he arrived, will you keep going? I betrayed Max. By giving up on love. But Valor never gave up. He chose to live. He chose the lion. And now, he had chosen me. I pulled him tight into my arms. He leaned into my chest and let out a breath. A long, low exhale, like he'd been holding it for years. It wasn't relief. It was release. And I whispered, I got you now, buddy. No one is throwing you away. No one. A week later, the New York Times ran the photo on its front page. A golden Alaskan Malamute pup sitting on the edge of a lion enclosure, eyes calm and unwavering, staring through the steel bars. Facing him was Solis, the female lion, majestic, quiet, guarding her companion like a sentinel. The headline, The Lion and the Puppy, an Unbreakable Bond. We didn't plan it. We didn't stage it for media, for likes, for praise. But the moment was too powerful to ignore. A misunderstood predator, an Alaskan Malamute pup nearly thrown away like trash, and a connection that challenged everything we thought we knew. Valor was formally adopted by me. The paperwork was easy. The decision was not. It meant tearing down the walls I had built since Max's death. It meant choosing to love again, choosing to risk pain again. But watching Valor sit by Solis every day, sometimes resting his head at the base of the fence, I knew the risk was worth it. Kids started asking for the lion's dog by name. A boy with severe anxiety disorder began visiting every week. The first time Valor licked the boy's hand through the kennel wire, he laughed, and whispered something to his mother, he's not scared of anything. Valor began visiting school groups and therapy sessions under Dr. Shaw's guidance. He never barked. He never jumped. He just was. Unwavering. Peaceful. Just as he was with Solis. And Solis changed, too. No longer introverted. No longer restless. She waited for him every morning. Her feeding became regular. She even started vocalizing. Small, low sounds that conveyed warmth more than warning. Our keepers called it a healing behavior. I just called it Valor. Every night, when I put him to bed, I'd find him curled up by the window facing her enclosure. That's how he fell asleep. Nose pressed to the glass, As if the female lion might need him in her dreams. And maybe, just maybe, she did. They were never supposed to meet. But the lioness and the Alaskan Malamute pup found something ancient in each other. Not instinct. Not kinship. But survival, and something beyond, hope. The journey of this small dog, from abandonment to recovery, shows how vital rescue organizations are. Caring for a rescued pup isn't just love. It's responsibility. Pet care. They didn't just save each other. The lion and the Alaskan Malamute reminded all of us that survival isn't just about strength. It's about connection. It's about the quiet moments between two damaged souls who refuse to give up. Solis, the predator we feared, showed the gentlest mercy. Valor, the puppy left to die, became a symbol of resilience we didn't know we needed. He wasn't guarded by me. He was guarded by love. Raw. Instinctual. Wordless. And perhaps that is the lesson. That sometimes the wildest creatures carry the gentlest souls. And sometimes, mercy has teeth. If this story resonated with you, please don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Spread the word. Because every view, comment, and click helps another animal be found, be heard, and be saved.